In this video, I'm going to do a detailed comparison between two of AMG's most popular engines, the M113K and the M156. I'll do a quick background on each engine and then get the comparison underway. We'll go over 4 categories: technology, sound, performance, and reliability. And I'll conclude with which one comes out on top after owning cars with each of these engines. So we'll start with the M113K. This engine was first seen in the SL55 AMG. This is a 5.4-liter single overhead cam V8 with 24 valves or 3 valves per cylinder. All aluminum construction is used for this engine. On top is a belt-driven 2.1-liter twin-screw supercharger. The M113K was rated at 469 horsepower in the E55 and up to 574 in the CLK DTM. Torque was 516 foot-pounds in the E55, up to 590 in the CLK DTM. In 2003, the M113K was awarded Performance Engine of the Year by Engine Technology International magazine. Now moving on to the M156, it was first seen in cars like the CLK 63. When the M156 was being developed by AMG, they wanted to match the power of the M113K engine, but with a naturally aspirated design in-house. This is effectively a 6.2-liter V8 with dual overhead cams and 32 valves, or 4 valves per cylinder. Mercedes claims that they had to market this engine as a 6.3 due to German tax laws. And that's also why the M113 was marketed as a 5.5-liter. Like the M113, the M156 uses all aluminum construction, but with a stronger closed-deck engine block. The M156's better cylinder heads and larger displacement make up for losing out on forced induction. The M156 was rated at 451 horsepower in the C63, up to 518 horsepower in the SL63. Torque was rated at up to 465 foot-pounds. In 2009 and 2010, the M156 was awarded Performance Engine of the Year. Both of these engines had special versions as well. For the M113K, it was the M155 in the SLR. And for the M156, it was the M159 in the SLS. Now when comparing these engines, the M156 revs up to 7,200 RPM instead of just 6,500 with most M113Ks. The M156 has variable valve timing, whereas the M113K is fixed. The M156 is the lighter engine of the two at around 200 kilograms instead of 220 of the M113K. The power figures were close with these engines, but the torque with the M113K was higher in all applications. So for technology and design, it's a draw. The M156 is the more advanced V8, but the M113K has a very good supercharger right from the factory. Now let's move on to sound. The M156 is the better sounding engine in more than one way. The exhaust sound coming from an M156 powered car will be the better of the two. The main difference will be heard from the M113 having 1 exhaust valve per cylinder, while the M156 has 2 exhaust valves. The CLS55 versus CLS63 is a good comparison because they have a very similar exhaust setup back from the engine. The engine noise is also better with the M156. On idle, this engine is incredibly smooth and quiet. On the other hand, because the M113K has a more primitive valve train, it makes more noise. Additionally, M113K engines, like in the E55, have a loud oil pump which you really hear on cold starts. These M113 noises are completely normal on this engine and characteristic of its design. On top of that, the clutch on the supercharger has an audible chirp when it engages, which a lot of owners complained about when these cars were new. So the M156 is overall a smoother and more normal running engine than the M113K is. So sound goes to the M156. Now let's look at performance. The M113K feels like the more powerful engine below 4,000 RPM. The M156 makes its peak power right at the top of the power band. However, running the same two cars on the same 93 fuel in the same 15 degrees Celsius conditions, the M113K powered car is slightly faster. 100 to 200 kph only took the E55 9.2 seconds, while it took the CLK63 almost 9.5 seconds. And remember, the CLK63 weighs less than the E55 and is rated by Mercedes to have similar horsepower to the E55. However, I would say that in hot 35 Celsius conditions, the advantage of the E55 would be eliminated, since it would be more affected by heat. So overall, these engines are very close in stock form. Performance has to go to the M113K because beyond stock cars like these, the M113K is easier and less expensive to modify for even more performance. Of course, there are folks out there who have added custom filters, smaller pulleys, bigger throttle bodies, and headers that really bring out crazy sound and big performance out of these cars. You can supercharge an M156, but that's a very expensive process. When it comes to reliability, there's a lot to talk about. The M113Ks can suffer from heat soaking and loss of power. The stock intercooler pump is usually not up to the job and is commonly upgraded. Also, oil leaks around the valve covers and around the rear main seal are common on the M113. The M156 has a few main issues. The first is camshaft wear and lifter noise issues, usually at higher mileages. The second is problems with the camshaft adjusters, which rattle on startup when they go bad.
That's what's happening.
Finally, the head bolts can corrode and potentially break in some circumstances, allowing water leakage at the head gasket. The issues with cam wear and the cam adjusters are the two more common issues, and they affect every single model year with this engine. The head bolts were updated in 2011 after engine number 60658. I can also throw fuel consumption under reliability and running costs, because the M113K is a little bit better on fuel both in city and highway driving, about 10 to 15% better in my experience. So reliability goes to the M113K. The M156 is still good if you are proactive with your oil changes and generally taking good care of the car. The M113K is just better in the area of reliability. So if we tally up the scores, it's M113K 3 versus M156 2, so the winner is the M113K. That's it for this video. Let me know in the comments which of these engines you'd prefer in your AMG. Thanks for watching, and if you want to support the channel, take a look at my store, link is in the description. If you want to see more Mercedes content, subscribe for more videos like this one.